The next speaker I decided I would introduce today just because we have a fairly long-standing history as well as with Glenn. Um, probably 10, 14 years. Has it been 14 years?
13?
13, 14, and there's, yeah. Anyway, we were looking, planning our conference. Deb, the girl that was working in the office with me, I tasked her or assigned her the task of finding an interesting speaker that would bring something different to the conference, a different take on something. So she had picked up a book out of the library that I had on paramagnetic energy. And I'm thinking, okay, that's different. We can do that. So she got a hold of Acres to see if Phil Callahan, the author of the book, would be able to come and speak on paramagnetic energy. And unfortunately, at the time, he was no longer traveling, I think due to health reasons and that kind of stuff. So, but they said, there's this Dr. Dykstra that I guess was associated or worked with him. So why don't you give him a call? So the day she phoned him, she had talked to him for a few minutes, and I came into the office, and all I heard her say was, "Yeah, I read his book. Was that ever interesting?" And when she got off the phone, she said to me, "Yeah, this guy is going to check his schedule and see what's going on. His name is Dr. Tom Dykstra, and he's an entomologist. He knows about insects." I was like, "Well, that's cool. That sounds like..." And I asked him, "Do you know anything about Brix?" And he did. He knows about Brix too. And she was really excited. So I was like, "Okay, well, that's really cool. I have a question." And Deb said, "What's that?" And I said, "Did you actually read that book?" Because Deb wasn't a book reader. She doesn't read books. And she kind of laughed and she goes, "To be honest, yeah, I did." And I was so impressed. So I knew this was going to turn out well for Deb to read a book to find this guy. Anyway, it's been many years that Tom has been coming up and sharing his information. He's opened up a lot of thought process. He's shared information that we haven't found anywhere else. And it's just a real honor and privilege to have him here to share his knowledge and wealth with us. So if you'd please welcome Mr. Thomas Dykstra.
Thank you. That was the best introduction I've ever had in my life. That was just awesome. It's bringing a tear to my fake tears to my eyes. Oh my, that was so good. Yeah, we do go back. We do go back. It has been a long time. There's a little bit more to that story. When Deb called me about the paramagnetism, I said, "Sure, I can do that." And I said, "Who is my audience?" And she said, "Farmers." And I said, "So you want me to talk about paramagnetism with farmers?" I said, I mean, I'd be happy to do that, but there is another talk that I have that, you might be interested in." And so I told her about the insects and Brix things. And she goes, "Ooh, that sounds kind of neat." And so this literally happened. And so I said, "Well, which one are you looking for?" I was kind of excited about doing this because for 10 years I've been developing data and had a lot of stuff, but hadn't put it together yet. And so when Deb said she would contact the proper authorities, Cindy, and discuss which one they wanted, she called me back the very next day. And I was like, well, that was a fast decision. And I said, "So Deb, which one are we going with?" And she says, "Both." And I thought, all right, we're going to do both then. And so that first presentation on insect and Brix, that was the first time that I ever gave it before. It was terrible. It was awful. Probably one of the worst Brix presentations that I've ever given, but it created a little bit of a phenomenon, and that was back in 2012, if memory serves. And so here I am today. That presentation, which has now been modified a little bit, usually shortened to a clean hour, has raised many, many questions. And these many, many questions that have been raised have caused me to develop some answers to these many, many questions. And these many, many questions have led me to come up with a second presentation dealing with the whole insects and Brix thing. And then I came up with a third presentation. And then I came up with a fourth presentation. And I just finished the fifth presentation on Brix. And so having started with Cindy back so long ago, the fifth presentation will be presented for the first time tomorrow. This one right here is number 2. This is the second one after the Brix presentation. For those of you who have seen the Brix presentation, that's going to give you a little bit more background and detail, but I'm just going to be forced to move to the second presentation. I will give a quick review to make sure that we're all on the same page as I then talk to you about this particular title, Insect Pest Succession, okay, as it relates to declining crop health. So let's start the slideshow and begin the process. I went through the literature and I found many extension sheets with many universities. And what they usually do is they list the insects that attack a particular crop. In this particular case, I just chose corn because corn is such a common crop. And I went through several different states and accumulated a list of all the insects that are known to attack corn. There are 30 of them here. Rhetorical question now. How many of you have seen all 30 of these insects on corn at the same time? I know the answer. It's 0. I've never seen it. You've never seen it. Nobody has ever seen it. And yet, we have 30 insects. So what exactly is going on? Is it that some are attacking different parts of the plant? Absolutely, maybe, because we've got the corn rootworms right there, the chrysomelids, diabrotica, they're going after the roots. Some might be going after the ear, some might be going after the stem, like the European corn borer. So maybe that's it. No, that's not it either, because they're still not attacking the plant at the same time. So why is this list so big? And why do we not see them all attacking at the same time? I should tell you, we also don't get the northern corn rootworm and the western corn rootworm and the southern corn rootworm all attacking at the same time either. And so because of this, there are clear differences between these 30 insects. Not just these 30 insects, but really all million species of insects that are out there. They are distinctive. They have a reason for what they do. And because that reason may not be clear to the rest of us, we need to be able to understand why God made 1 million species and not just 250. Why do we have so many? And so this is a presentation that will teach you a little bit about how insects are being selective and that they're going after certain crops, and in this particular case, based upon the declining health of some of these crops, okay? If you've never seen this before, it's good for you to see it now. Insects only feed upon food that is considered unfit, nutritionally poor, dead, or dying. If this is a shock to you, then maybe 1, you haven't seen the presentations, but 2, you're probably just reacting to what you learned in the university, because it's the same thing I learned in the university. When I was at Cornell, they never taught this. When I got the master's and the PhD, I was never taught this. So where did I learn something like this? Well, I do have 3 degrees in entomology. I've also taken 23 courses in entomology, and so maybe I feel that I've got some sort of background in order to understand this a little bit better. However, it wasn't me who came up with this. This has been known for over 50 years. That insects are nature's garbage collectors. And I came into the picture late. It was just before 2000. And in that process, I was approached at my first conference with my brand new PhD, feeling pretty powerful right now with my suit and tie and thinking that I was going to conquer the world. And I got questions from farmers about Brix. And I could not answer any of them. From that point, I started looking into it slowly over the course of 10 years until that fateful call by Deb, who started the process. So here we are now looking at this. If you do not understand or do not want to believe this truth, maybe you need to see the first presentation, because the first presentation, I will tell you why they're only going after unfit, nutritionally poor, dead or dying food. And I would beat it into you for an hour. I don't have the luxury of doing that right now. Therefore, I'm going to beat into you the second presentation, which is about to begin about now. So this leaf Brix chart. Leaf Brix Not root Brix, not fruit Brix, not stem Brix, leaf. So if you are crushing a leaf and getting 2 or 3 drops from it and test it on a Brix refractometer that Glenn has already talked about already, then you have the ability in order to test how much total dissolved solids is in there. And most of the total dissolved solids are sugar. So because it's sugar, you are indirectly measuring photosynthesis. That's the purpose of a plant. The purpose of all plants is to photosynthesize, is to take that sun energy and turn it into sugar. Meaning, the healthier the plant, the higher the sugar level is going to be. Thus, this chart. Now, the leaf Brix readings are going to be between 1 and 20% or 1 and 20 because it's equivalent to 1% or 20% sugar. They almost never get above 20, at least in the leaf range. They can in other parts of the plant, and that's a different presentation altogether. It's actually the third one. And so for this, I've got them all listed, and it's good for you to take a look and understand what happens when we are between 1 to 2 Brix versus pushing 20 Brix. So if you are in the 1 to 2 Brix range, force feeding is necessary. Force feeding, because the plant's not doing well. And because the plant can't feed itself. And because the plant can't feed itself, we have to force feed it. The greens on a golf course. Very, very tiny grass, not photosynthesizing that well. Very poor root system. They're going to be between 1 to 2 Brix, sometimes a little bit lower. House plants that are not exposed to the sun are going to be running at 1 to 2 Brix. This is relatively common to see it. If you don't think that a house plant is unhealthy, take it outside and see how long it lasts. If you have that 1 Brix plant, it could be dead within a few days to a week. They don't do well when they're suddenly outside, but when they're protected, it's different. So that's the first stage. You must feed the plant. They cannot feed themselves. Second, 3 to 7. If you are between 3 to 7 Brix, these plants have a fighting chance at surviving. Most of the other ones in nature are going to get picked off. The only reason the 1 to 2s were still there is because we're feeding them daily. If you've ever been on a golf course, you know that they're feeding them daily, even on Sunday. There's no day off for feeding a lot of the grass on a golf green. It's the same thing with our house plants. They don't do well if they're unprotected. But 3 to 7, we're doing a little bit better right now. This isn't too bad. They don't look good. They don't look great. But they're doing okay. And they got a fighting chance of pulling through, obviously. 7 Brix is going to be doing better than 3 Brix. But I've got this just spread out into a general sort of way. An interesting thing happens between 3 to 7 Brix. The plant secondary metabolites increase at 6. They're practically, but not exclusively, non-existent below 6. But they start to pick up at 6 and increase drastically at 7, 8, 9, and so on and so forth. What are these plant secondary metabolites? They are the terpenes, they're the flavonoids, they're the sesquiterpenes. These are the glucosinolates. They're in the 5 figures. There's tens of thousands of them. These secondary plant metabolites give color to the plant. They give flavor and taste to the plant. They give odor to a plant. Without these secondary plant metabolites, they don't look good, they don't smell good, and they don't taste good. Well, what are you trying to say, Doc? Are you trying to tell us that if we're below 6 Brix, that they taste like cardboard? Is that what you're trying to tell us? Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you. And if you have ever tasted fruit or vegetables that taste like cardboard, you now know what a low Brix plant, or at least plant part, is doing. And there are reasons for it being that unhealthy. Okay? So these secondary plant metabolites are there for a reason. They also do something else. It's very interesting. That is, they're pretty good at repelling insects. These secondary plant metabolites are mostly good at repelling specific insects. Well, what are you trying to say? You're trying to say that a plant below 6 Brix is unprotected? You better believe I am. And they are. As we move from 3 to 7, we have the sword and the shield, meaning they can defend themselves now for the first time. From about 8 to 12, several things happen. One is water retention abilities increase. Why is this important? Because when you have a plant that is photosynthesizing well, producing a lot of sugar, a lot of that sugar is sent down into the roots through the root exudates. And when it's sent down there, it is hygroscopic. Hygroscopic is a long term for meaning it absorbs water. Therefore, this sugar absorbs water, gives you water retention abilities. It makes you in better shape for a drought. And that becomes important. And as you go up from 8 to 9 to 10 to 11, your water retention abilities increase drastically. Drastically meaning you're saving 20% of your water, 40% of your water, 60% of your water. Your water usage goes down in a very large way as you move from 8 to 12 because the microbes are being fed. And the microbes like to take a little bit of a sip of water. And it's the microbes that give you water retention. Many of you will say, no, that's not what I heard. I heard it's all about the soil. The soil gives you water retention capabilities. Well, yeah, to an extent, but soil can't compete with microbes. Microbes can hold on to water better than clay soil. So don't tell me that clay soil is going to hold on to water better. It's the microbes that will hold on to it, and that's where you get your massive water retention abilities, in addition and secondarily from the soil. Okay? At this point, insect resistance begins in earnest because the secondary plant metabolites, although not maximized, are high enough in order to start protecting the plant. And so we've now got resistance that is developing in the plant as it moves from 8 to 9 to 10 to 11. And that can be a wonderful thing if you've never seen it. The plants from 8 to 12 look better. You see them. They might even look perfect to you. They're not there yet, but they look pretty good and they are going to look better than they did from 3 to 7. These plants from 12 to 20 are objectively healthy. Notice I didn't say subjectively healthy. This is not opinion. This is fact, meaning that any test you use is going to show you that you're dealing with a healthy plant, not just the Brix reading. The Brix reading just happens to be the cheapest and least expensive and most accurate way of telling the health. There are many other ways, all of them inferior, but all of them each contributing in their own way to give you an idea of how healthy a plant is. These plants are now producing food. This is what I call food. The food before this is not food in the real sense. Food in the real sense is that food which you consume that gives you nutrition, that makes you healthy, prevents disease, and gives you a long life, 70, 80, 90, and beyond. That's food. Okay? Snack food is not food. That's just a temporary thing that we put in our stomach in order to take care of hunger pains. We can't survive for long periods on this snack food. Therefore, when we are hitting 12 and above, we are now producing food. And 16, 17 Brix food is going to be even better than 12. But you get the idea right now of where I am going. It is now fit for human consumption and bada-ba, no insects and no disease. Holy smokes, how can he say this? And then you realize, oh, he does have 3 degrees in entomology and he has taken 23 courses, so maybe I should listen to him. But at this point, there are no insects attacking the plant. They're not interested in the plant anymore. It's not digestible. That's the first presentation. You can go back and check about that digestibility. And there's also no disease on the plant. You're not getting the fungal diseases anymore. Spraying insecticides, waste of your time. Spraying the fungicides, now it's a waste of your time. You use those because that's rescue chemistry. When your plants are low Brix, they are expensive, difficult to raise, and will empty your pocketbook. Once you get to this point, you can save a lot of money on inputs, and you're now making the P word, profit. And these are the groups that are associated with these various Brix levels. There are 4 levels of insects, 4 feeding guilds that are used to separate. That kind of gives you an idea as to what insects will be found on a plant at any one time. And this goes to the whole insect succession title that I gave you in the first. The first is the aphid group. The aphid group will lose interest in a plant at 6 Brix, or in some cases, 7 Brix. And finally, by the time you reach 8 Brix, you haven't got aphids left on the plant anymore. The sucking insects, these are a little bit more advanced than the aphid group. The aphid group will include aphids, that will include scale insects, it includes the phylloxerans, it will include the mealybugs, the bottom of the barrel bugs that feed on crappy plants. Okay. The sucking insects include the other sucking insects, the leaf hoppers, the frog hoppers, the plant hoppers, the stink bugs, the lantern flies. Yes, the lantern flies are true bugs. And so all of these insects are now sucking on the plant, are now going to lose interest in a plant at 7 Brix, sometimes 8 Brix, depending upon the species. And by the time you get to 9 Brix, they're pretty much all gone. Then we have the chewing insects. Chewing insects include the coleoptera, the beetles, maybe feeding on your roots, maybe feeding on the leaves. They include the butterflies and the moths, the lepidoptera, and those caterpillars that are feeding upon your leaves. Those that are chewing insects lose interest in a plant from 9 Brix, maybe 10 Brix, and finally 11 Brix. By the time you get to the chewing insects that most impress me, we're now into the grasshopper group. This grasshopper group includes the grasshoppers and includes the longhorn grasshoppers, the katydids, the crickets. These insects are able to go a notch higher. They will lose interest in a plant at 10 Brix, 11 Brix, or 12 Brix. When I say 12 plus, because the grasshoppers have impressed me, they will come and take bites out of 12 Brix plants. They just lose interest after a short period of time. Sometimes it takes them just a few minutes, and they will fly on. Okay? So these 4 groups are important for you to take a look at, because I'm about to start talking about how this process unfolds in this second presentation on insects and Brix. Now, if I'm going to discuss these 4 groups and what happens, I'm going to need a plant that is going downhill. I'm going to need some evidence over the course of time where the plants start to lose their health, and then we start to see changes in the insects. So what would that be? I know, citrus. I'm a Florida boy, so because of that, I'm going to talk about citrus. Does it apply to every other crop on planet Earth? You better believe it does. It even applies to canola up here in Canada. Sure does. But right now, I'm talking about citrus. One, because it's from my home state. The second reason I'm doing it is because there's a massive amount of data on it in the USDA and others, and it's been around since the 1800s, which is kind of cool. So I've got a lot of the data to play with. So let's take a look at citrus, shall we? They started keeping track in 1910. Citrus was being taken care of in the 1800s, they just weren't keeping track of it. Once they started keeping track of oranges, you can see in the 1910 to 1911 year, if you don't know, this citrus starts at the end of the year and they're picking it at the beginning of the following of the next year. That's why you see 2 figures, not just a 1910. You see it's at the end of 1910, the beginning of 1911. That's why I've always got 2 years listed there. I think you can all understand that, but I just wanted to mention that upright. All right, so there's a lot of boxes here. 1 times 1,000 boxes, so 5,000 times 1,000 boxes, that first line is 5 million. So during the first 2 years that they started recording it, they were running about 3 to 3.5 million boxes of oranges. And then the third year they started keeping track, we went over 5 million boxes. So production in Florida was really taking off. And you can see the trend. It's very obvious. Everybody can see this. The orange industry is looking really good. It's taking off. from one decade to the next, 1910, 1920, 1930, all the way to 1940, we can see that the citrus industry is increasing nicely. However, there are a few problems that can be associated with it. And it's not necessarily our fault. We're just going to go and blame this on, we're going to blame this on God and Mother Nature, because there are some meteorological temperature effects which do affect citrus. But this is only going to add to the story that I wish to tell you. All right, so at the time, for this first number of decades, we're dealing with about 40 to 60 citrus trees per acre. If you've ever seen a full-size citrus tree, the thing's going to be 20 to 30 feet high, and it's going to be very, very big. You can't fit that many, and that's the reason why. So if you're used to 36,000 corn per acre, this is on a completely different scale to what you may be used to. So we're dealing with 40 to 60 trees, and that's how citrus began. And then in 1917 and 1918, we did have that act of God where we had in Florida, which is a very damaging thing, and that is a freeze. This freeze is denoted by a blue line. It was the 1917 to 1918 year when we had a deep freeze. Nothing you can do about that. The citrus is just going to have to do its best, but you can see citrus suffered. Citrus suffered because before, we were doing pretty good. We were over 5 million boxes, and then we had the freeze, and we went down to about 3.5 million boxes. Is this a big deal? Kind of, sort of, because farmers are losing money. They're no longer getting the 5 million anymore. We went down. We went down. But the oranges are the ones that got killed, not the tree. What happened after this? 1, 2, 3 years of growth right after that freeze. Why? The reason why that happened is because the tree had a chance to rest. So a freeze is bad if you're trying to make money, but this gives the tree a chance to rest and it recovers. And the 3 years after that, massive increase in yield because they had 1 year off. And that 1 year off made a huge difference for citrus. And the industry is booming again. So these natural occurrences occur. I need you to be aware of that, and I need you to be aware how the tree responds to it. Uh-oh, we have another freeze. This freeze is the 1934 to 1935 freeze. And you can see right after it, we had a little bit growth here, and then 1, 2, 3. So whether you want to do 3 or 4, we had massive growth after the freeze. Once again, the trees had a chance to rest. It killed the oranges, not the tree. And we had recovery. This is how a natural system works. And then bada boom, 1939 and 1940, we did have another freeze, and that's why we had a pretty big drop. But we were already no longer at 5 million, we were at 30 million boxes before that freeze happened. So I've now taken you in just a few minutes through several decades of citrus. Allow me to keep going. Now we're 1940 to 1980. You take a step back, looks pretty good. We still see the growth going on. But are things just peachy? Not so. At this point in the 1940s, pesticide use began. And it began on a massive scale. We were using pesticides before. We had arsenic and some other pesticides that we used to kill insects. But now it was a coordinated effort. This coordinated effort was impressive. And companies started producing pesticides at a very large rate. And then they started using them on the trees. Much more pronounced than they had ever done before with this coordinated effort. What does that mean? Well, let me tell you. Herbicides kill what? What's the target organism? Weeds. And side effect is they kill microbes too in the soil, the ones that are feeding your plant. Fungicides kill, fungi. You knew I was coming with that, didn't you? Side effect, ouch, they kill microbes and the mycorrhizal fungi too. Insecticides kill, oh, you guessed it, Insects. Side effect, they're killing microbes as well. What this means is that you are doing a fantastic job of killing microbes if you're using all three, herbicides and fungicides and insecticides. And you're just not killing some. You're doing a fantastic job of taking a lot out because the insecticides are only going after certain microbes. The herbicides are only going after certain microbes. And you're going after it in 3 different ways, taking out the microbes and therefore lowering the health of the plant. And because I'm an entomologist, it actually gets much worse than that because I'm aware of the chlorinated hydrocarbons, the organophosphates, sometimes known as OPs. I'm aware of the carbamates. I'm aware of the pyrethroids, sometimes known as the synthetic pyrethroids. And I'm also aware of the neonicotinoids, sometimes just called neonics. And we are told by the universities that we should rotate the 3 insecticides in order to stave off resistance in the insect that we were trying to kill. Well, think about what I just said above. Now we're using 3 different classes of insecticides. I'm not talking about the insects now. What do you think is happening to the microbes in the soil? Yeah, you're doing a good job of cleaning them out as well. This is the process that began in the 1940s. So when I see the pesticide use, you see, well, it looks like growth is good. I don't see what the problem is, but I see something different. Allow me, if you will, to introduce our first insect for today. In the 1940s, an insect appeared on the citrus trees. It is a swallowtail, no ordinary swallowtail, it's the giant swallowtail. That means it's kind of big. That's all that it means. It's a pretty butterfly, truly, it is. It's not a pretty caterpillar. The caterpillar is designed to look like bird poop, and it does a really good job of doing that. When you disturb it, it releases this osmeterium, which is bright red and stinks, or at least has an odor that most birds find unpleasant. So this is really its only defense. One is not to be seen, and if it is seen, then it tries to get stinky, and that's how it survives. This thing started appearing on citrus trees in plenitude. Wasn't really there before, but now it was taken off. This is our first sign that the plants, the trees, are going down. Their Brix levels are going down, and the insects are now coming in and letting us know about what's going on. Before this, they actually had the katydids. I didn't include that in there, but the katydids were there earlier on, but they were never there in plenitude. The swallowtail followed, and this is all a result of the pesticides that began. But something else happened, and that is high-density planting began. Someone got the very bright idea is that the citrus trees weren't large enough. So therefore, what we're going to do is we're just going to throw more on an acreage. Instead of dealing with 40 to 60, we're now going to put on 82 per acre. This is a big tree. Going up to 82 means things are going to get very crowded. You now create for yourself another problem. And that is this. So if you have a given tree, it's a big tree, that the roots, generally speaking, are going to extend about the length of the leaf canopy. So the drip zone, as it's sometimes called. The roots will generally go about that far. Certainly they extend beyond that though, but the majority of them are going to be within what's known as the drip zone or the leaf canopy. And therefore the roots are going to be mostly found within that yellow region. Uh-oh, not so in Florida. In Florida, we have a little bit of a problem, and that is moisture. We have a very high water table. Sometimes that water table gets to within 6 to 12 inches of the surface. So we don't have a lot of dirt. We've got water underneath that dirt. And because of that, the roots don't like, except for the tap roots. Tap roots can go into water, but they generally don't like being in water. What that means is that the roots are now going to extend beyond the drip zone. They're going to extend beyond the leaf canopy. They are now going to be spread out more than they were before. And because they're spread out more than they were before, they're now going to be running into one another because we're going up to 82 plants, trees, per acre. Now our roots are running into one another. That means the roots are now suffering in their own little way. High density planting begins at 82. We've now got a problem developing, although it's not so obvious. And then we did have a freeze. Right about the time of high density planting, we did have a freeze. And so this freeze came in. And look at what happened after this freeze. It was about 1957. Look at the 3 years following that freeze. First sign that there's trouble. We didn't have a recovery. The citrus trees are supposed to recover, but they didn't. And because they didn't, we had 3 years of mediocre growth after a freeze. It took the 4th year for us to jump up and actually start to recover. But this was also due to high density planting. We're starting to create more problems for ourselves. All right, let's see. That was 1962 to 1963. We had another freeze, okay? Look at what happened after this freeze. Remember those 3 years of recovery? Check out the year following. That didn't do well at all, meaning these trees were not doing well. These trees were not doing as well as they should be doing. The year following a freeze, it didn't recover. The next year, it was in bad shape. We had to wait. In other words, there was a delay. There was a delay in the tree's recovery because it was compromised by 2 things, the use of the pesticides as well as the use of high-density planting. Well, what do you know? How did that happen? Allow me now to introduce our second insect that has now arrived on the scene. This is the citrus root weevil. Oh, key word, root. They're going after the roots of the citrus tree. And when did they arrive? Oh, first made their appearance in 1964, very soon after high-density planting was begun. We've now got another signal, another indicator that the trees are going downhill. And now this insect has come in that really wasn't a problem before it became a major problem at that point in 1964. Had a half hysterical guy come at me at a conference one time in the 90s. You need to do something about this. You entomologists, you need to do something about this. I was like some lowly graduate student. I'm like, whoa, easy there, man. Restraining order, I need a little bit of protection. But this was the problem that was developing, and people were starting to panic. How did they respond? University of Florida said, well, we need a fungicide to control Phytophthora infection in the roots. Why was there a problem with the roots? Because their health is being compromised. We now have a fungus infection. First, we have the citrus root weevil. Now we've got a fungus infection, both of them in the roots. Follow what I'm talking about here. And then, just for good measure, they decided to throw in an insecticide to take out the adults on the leaves. Then, for good measure, they threw in another insecticide to control the larvae underneath the ground. So we've now introduced not 2, but 3 new pesticides to the concoction that has been developing for a few decades already, meaning the health level is continuing to go down. So this is where we are right now. And lo and behold, we have another freeze. This freeze occurred 1977 to 78. And I'm sure some of you are looking ahead right now and saying, what happened the year after that freeze? Did it go up? No, it did not go up. This is now the second time that this has happened. Before we had evidence that the trees recovered, now they're not recovering anymore. And so we had to wait another year before we get a jump in production. And you can see that the trees are trying to tell us something. Then we moved to the 80s. The 80s was an interesting time. Part of the problem with the 80s is because we had 4, not 1, but 4 deep freezes. 1980 and 81, what happens right after that? No recovery. 2 years happened, and we were not able to recover from that freeze. Then we had 2 freezes back to back. The recovery was very, very slow. No spikes anymore, just very, very slow recovery for 4 years, and then bam, we got hit with a 4th freeze in the 1980s. Talk to anyone in citrus, they will remember this time. It was the coldest decade that we've had on record, the hottest being the 30s, and so here we are with a very cold 80s problem. So the trees are not looking good. This is actually the first decade that we had a decrease. First decade. All the rest of them are going up for various reasons, one or another. This time, we've now got a decrease. Means we've got a problem. However, something interesting happened. Data. This data said that this it was catastrophic. It was putting people out of business. They were running out of Florida. And yet, it only killed 6% of the trees. 4 freezes in 10 years only killed 6%. What does that tell you? They are trying to survive. Plants want to live. They're tough, unless we make it difficult for them, but they're tough. 94% of the trees lived. This should be a sign to you as a farmer that we are not dealing with wimpy plants here that need to be cared for over and over again. Then in the 1990s, you may remember things warmed up. Oh, everyone takes a sigh of relief, they breathe, this is looking good. I like the fact that we're going up. But there's another problem here that I know about that you do not. Yes, things started to increase in the 1990s. Yes, we had some warmer temperatures. This, by the way, is the same freeze at the end of the 80s. I just threw that in there. But things look like they're improving. However, first problem, 82, that's out the door now. Higher density planting is now at 115. 115 of those massive trees in 1 acre. Shoot, man, we keep doing this, we're going to hit corn. And so we're at 115 right now. An additional problem has now been moved to this equation. Allow me to introduce our next insect. And because we have higher density planting, it's not just the roots that are running into one another, it's now the leaves. The leaves cannot get sunshine. And when the leaves don't get sunshine, they suffer. And when the leaves suffer, their health goes down, an insect will come in and start taking them out. And that insect was the citrus leaf miner, which appeared, coincidentally, I'm sure, in 1993. Once the canopies started overlapping with one another, we had a lot of compromised trees, and the citrus leaf miner was not helping the situation. But these unhealthy trees were continuing to go downhill. The citrus leaf miner was there in order to help things out. You'll also notice it was first detected in California in 2000. That was the first sign to me that the California industry is doing better than the Florida industry, because the citrus leaf miner was there, but it never really took hold until 2000 and then started to get bad, which means the California oranges, generally speaking, are doing better than the Florida oranges, which is a true statement. So let's go from 2000, let's go up to 2022, and let's see what happens to the citrus industry based upon some of these changes that we've just discussed. So we're starting on in 2000 to 2001. First 4 years of 2000 don't look too bad. We're obviously pretty high as far as the number of boxes right now. But someone said 115 is not enough. It's not enough. We need to go to 150, give or take. 1998, they made the decision to start planting a massive number of trees per acre. That's the first problem that developed. Once that came in addition to the pesticides, in addition to the high density planting, in addition to the weakening caused by the root weevil, in addition to the weakening by the citrus leaf miner, as the industry is starting to catapult into nothingness, the Asian citrus psyllid then moved into the picture. This Asian citrus psyllid first detected in Florida in 1998, and it spreads citrus greening. The citrus greening is killing a lot of our citrus trees. Why? Because they are so weak. Their immune system has been so compromised that they cannot fight off anything, even a wimpy disease like citrus greening. Yes, right now you're thinking, I can't believe he said that. Doesn't he realize he's being recorded? This is heresy that he's saying right now. Citrus greening is a wimpy disease. It only takes hold of weak plants. These plants right now, I've been down there many times. The citrus plants are usually running about 3 to 7 Brix, in case you're wondering. Once you hit 9 Brix, there are no more Asian citrus psyllids on the tree, and we have no evidence, visual evidence of citrus greening at 9 Brix. 9 isn't even that good, but at 9 Brix, and we've seen a lot of 9 Brix trees, they actually look pretty good. But a lot of them are not at 9. As I said, they're between 3 to 7. So this insect, although a problem, and spreading citrus greening, which is a problem, is only a problem because we made it so, and the decline of the industry continues. So here we are in 2020, and high density planting, because people started to panic. I was like, wow, we're losing oranges. What are we going to do? And someone came up with that great idea. It's like, you know what? 82 wasn't enough. 115 wasn't enough. I don't even think 150 was enough. Let's take this up to 200. This will take care of the problem. We're going to be able to get the oranges that we need. And so they did. Started going to 200. By the way, I should tell you, in 2024, the average is about 250. As of right now, it's about 250. So we went up to higher density planting, and we're now at about 200 trees per acre. The downfall of the industry continues, and we hit, in 2021, an 80-year low. Now think about what I've just done with all of you right now. I have taken you through a century, talking about a plant, a citrus tree, the different insects that are on it. We, in our wisdom, have been doing a large number of things over the decades, and we are now, after all of our smarts, have now reached an 80-year low in citrus production. How can I possibly trust the wisdom of this? I look at the evidence. I don't see evidence that we're actually helping the situation. I actually feel, as you probably think, that we're hurting the situation. So an 80-year low, in 80 years, let me do the math for you. That's 8 decades. Trying to help that for everyone who doesn't want to think right now after lunch. Okay? So this is pathetic that you have an 80-year low in 2021. That was the next year. The industry is in free fall. Just 2 weeks ago, I heard that one of the largest citrus growers in Florida went belly up. One of the largest, not a small, Joe and Pop operation, but one of the largest, just went belly up. $3.99 is what I was paying for orange juice. Now I'm paying $7.99, and the orange juice doesn't taste as good. Doesn't taste as good. As a matter of fact, I can taste citrus greening. I was talking with a few of you at this conference and the last conference, how you actually can detect and taste citrus greening in your orange juice. I'm paying $7.99 a gallon now. I'm paying more than I did a decade ago, and the orange juice doesn't taste as good because citrus greening gives it an off flavor. So that's where we were. As a matter of fact, the next year I don't have yet. It wasn't good, but you could see the trend right now and as to what's developing. This is now what they're doing. Yes, those are citrus trees. Because some of you are doubting me right now. You're thinking, no, those are bushes. That's a bush farm. Ornamental horticulture. No, those are citrus trees. Those are not bushes. And when they grow up, they're going to be running into one another, and it's going to be a mess because you don't plant them that close. Plants like to be able to breathe. We just learned from Glenn about how important oxygen is. They also want access to the nutrients. They don't want to be competing at this type of level. And they're put on an imidacloprid regimen for the first 4 years. That's a neonic. Imidacloprid is put on for the first 4 years. Why? In order to protect the tree from the Asian citrus psyllid. So they give it an insecticide for 4 years, the first 4 years of its life, when it's a baby, in order to protect it from the Asian citrus psyllid. Immediately after they stop, after the 4th year, the Asian citrus psyllid comes in and puts citrus greening in the plant, practically instantaneously, because the plant is so weak. This is the progress we are making. Oh no, it gets worse. This is a hedge. No, it's not a hedge. This is citrus in Florida. Things are so close to one another that you can't even see the individual tree anymore. This is not a suburban hedge. This is citrus growing in Florida. Why is the industry in free fall? Take a look at the picture behind me right now. And this is what they're doing to the young plants. Well, we can't protect them. Ha! Therefore, we're just going to cover them with nets. That's what we've come to in our wisdom. Well, our chemicals don't seem to be having an effect. Let's just cover them with a net. We'll just protect them from the Asian citrus psyllid. Well, what happens when you cover it with a net? You prevent the sun from hitting it. Citrus is a high sun plant. Some plants are little low sun plants. Citrus is a high sun plant. They want massive sunshine. They're not going to tolerate putting a blanket over them, which means the plant is going to suffer again. Allow me to introduce the next insect. It is actually protecting against the Asian citrus psyllid. That's the funny thing about it with these nets. But Nipiococcus viridis is getting underneath the nets. And a mealybug has now arrived on the situation. And we're finding this mealybug underneath the nets, feeding upon the severely weakened citrus plant that's underneath the net and has a imidacloprid growing through its veins. That's what we've come to. It's called the Lebec mealybug, spherical mealybug. These are some of the names. It was introduced in Florida, 2009. Believe me, it was there before, but it's just taken off now. So it's the new one. It's not spreading disease like the Asian citrus psyllid. Therefore, it's not on the radar, but the quality of the plant has gone down. Now that I've just educated you about this, let me take you through so you can see the wisdom that I have just portrayed to you right now. Let's go through this. At first, before the pesticides came in, we just had a very low infestation of some katydids. And it really wasn't an infestation. But the katydids, there's a specific katydid, a couple of them that were actually feeding upon the citrus. Never a problem. So that was the grasshopper group. The next group to come in, the chewing insects. I told you that was the swallowtail butterfly. That was feeding on the leaves. That was the next one. That is a chewing insect. After that, another chewing insect followed. That was Diaprepes abbreviatus. That is the citrus root weevil. A second chewing insect came in. After that was done, we moved into the last and final chewing insect, which was the citrus leaf miner, which was now chewing its way through the leaves. After that chewing insect was kind of done and not as much of a problem, we then moved into a sucking insect. This was the Asian citrus psyllid. The Asian citrus psyllid came in next. After the Asian citrus psyllid, and we started putting the nets over, we then moved into the mealybugs. The mealybugs belong to that group of the aphid group. And so we have now reached the point where these plants cannot defend themselves against disease or really any insect on planet Earth. This is why the industry is going downhill. This is why I wanted to teach you about insect succession. This is why when you go out on canola or any other Canadian crop that you have up here, or even the corn and soybeans, is that you are going to have succession going on. And you are going to be able to tell the relative Brix levels based upon this chart and give you an idea of how bad your plants are and at what stage. Don't think that just because you have aphids that that's bad. Usually what that means is they're just going after the flush, which are the weakened leaves at the top. Once the aphids start attacking the rest of the plant, that's an indication that you're probably dealing with something below 6 Brix. So you can see how this process works. I taught you how this process works in citrus. I'll just leave you with a few interesting facts. The importance of sunlight in the production of high yields of good quality citrus fruit cannot be overstressed. Wisdom from 1978, forgotten. Higher density planting pushed the trees to produce quickly. And the first 10 years, sometimes, saw increased yields. Beyond that, trees grew into one another, and their longevity health was reduced. Citrus trees can easily live for 50 to 70 years. They begin to produce crop by the 3rd to 5th year, and they will produce citrus every year of its long life, with the exception of a deep freeze. Now growers are hoping to get 10 years out of a tree. That's not anywhere near 50 to 70 years. Do I have to do the math for you? There's a large difference between 10 years and 50 to 70. Plus, since the trees will not grow to adulthood, they're just planting them closer together. They've pretty much given up. The higher density prevents exposure to the full sun, which they need, and we have known since at least 1978, believe me, a lot before that, and further intermingling of the branches comprises the healthy growth as it reduces the canopy. And they need the canopy because the canopy are the solar panels, and they're getting sugar, and then they're filling the oranges, and that's what makes my orange juice taste good. So everything is being compromised right now, so I now have to pay $7.99 for juice that doesn't taste as good. The industry in my, I'm going to call it home state because I grew up in Rochester, New York, my now adopted home state is going downhill, and this hurts. A mature orange tree produces 1,200 oranges. Citrus becomes fully mature at 35 years. You can go 35 years before you hit that point. It's a big tree at that point too, I should point out. But after 35 years, you have now reached full maturity and will be pushing out between about 900 to 1,200 oranges per tree. That is when orange citrus growing was profitable. Now, it's not profitable, but it was before. Putting out 900 to 1,200 oranges, whereas now we're doing about 300. It's about 300. That's our average per tree right now. Are we producing at capacity? Not even close. And those 300 oranges are also not as healthy as the 900 to 1,200 that we had before. Whew, I have hit hard. I hit hard on the first presentation, which caused a little bit of an outcry. I now hit hard on the second presentation, and I will not relent. That's why I have a third, a fourth, and you're going to see tomorrow a fifth presentation talking about the whole insect Brix sugar thing, because tomorrow it's all about sugar. I have done my best. If I cannot convince you if you've seen the first talk and now the second talk, I would invite you to go ahead and continue with the other talks. And if I can't do it after 5 talks, then maybe it's not my fault. Because that's 5 long hours of beating into you, and at that point, there may not be much I can do to help you. I would really like to thank you for putting up with me for the past hour plus. At this time, and only at this time, if I have permission, I would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Whew. All right, looks like you're going to be going to the microphone if you have a question, probably because they're recording this, so they can hear the question. They'll just ask you to go to the microphone. There's 2 of them right now.
So who are they that you keep talking about?
Oh.
Because there's obviously smarter people that should have figured all this out before we got to this point. No?
No.
No?
No. No. Nope.
So who are they?
Who are they?
The
orange industry. The industry is composed of a lot of people. There is a board, there's a citrus board, and on the citrus board sits a number of big citrus farmers, and then we have a lot of farmers that are underneath and take the decisions from that board. We have, at this time, I think at least three entomologists, many other professors at the University of Florida, but there were 3 entomologists. I know one has passed away, and there are more who are looking at the citrus issue. So there's a lot of people out there who are involved in this, professors, citrus board, farmers. No, this has not been pointed out. And this presentation has been pointed out. It's even been on YouTube. There's 40,000 views right now, and we're still just not making any headway, which means there's a part of me that says, I'm sorry, but there's nothing more I can do. I've done my best. I'll continue to make presentations. Hopefully I'll get listened to, not because I have an ego, not because I have pride, but because I'm trying to help my home state. I'm trying to help the farmers that are there. And of course, I like a good glass of orange juice in the morning. All right, thank you.
Like the demise of an industry, right?
It's the demise of the industry. Yes, it's being talked about right now that it is going it's going to go down to zero. And so right now, California is going to have to pick up the slack. They are not going full blown into what we've done in Florida yet. This is why the California citrus industry is doing better than we are. They are in trouble, but they're way behind us, meaning it's going to be a minimum of 10 years, probably more, before we start to see problems, assuming that they go in the same direction that we do. And I don't know if they are. I really don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah.
I hope not. Thank you. Questions? Yes.
So seriously, does anybody, even a small-time farmer, try to reduce their population?
Okay, I mean, if you're going to ask the question, I'll tell you yes. I got a phone call one time, and they said, Tom, and I said, yeah, what's up? And it was someone that I know. He goes, you were talking about the density of the tree. What's the density? What kind of density are we looking at? What's the distance between a tree for what you're looking to get? I'm like, he's talking fast. I'm like, I don't know. I'd have to sit down and calculate that. I have to find out exactly how big an acre is. We need to find out and then talk about the dimensions and then find out what the distance between a tree is. I said, tell you what, I'll sit down, I'll run the numbers, I'll get back to you. I don't know, I'll get back to you in a few days to make sure that I'm good and ready to go. I said, by the way, when are you planning? What's my time frame? He goes, oh, they're planning right now. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to keep you on the phone, and I'm going to pull out the calculator, and I'm going to start doing some rough calculations because they're planting right now. Preferably, I'd like to get a phone call before you're actually out there and planting. I prefer not you to be on the John Deere with your seeder. Yeah, I got a quick question for you right now in regards to carrots. And I'm like, well, when do you plan on planting? Well, I'm about halfway done right now, so anything you could do would really help. So yes, there are some people. There are some people who are trying to do, in my opinion, the right thing, and we have seen that once the Brix gets high enough, the citrus greening is no longer an issue. They continue to beat down the plants, and they are running at 3 to 7 right now. Very, very low Brix levels, and 7 is on the high side. It was a pleasure to see in the 9 Brix ones. We did measure a 15.9 tree, which looked perfect. It's one of the most perfect citrus trees I've ever seen.
I couldn't help to notice that the plants with the coverings on them,
Yes.
this funny brownish look under the trees. Like there wasn't grassy green under the trees.
Yeah, the brownish underneath the trees is an herbicide. It's usually glyphosate. They're spraying glyphosate on the trees. That's another issue altogether. You want me to go into glyphosate? Glenn's like, oh, don't go into glyphosate right now, Tom. Please don't do that. And so if I go into glyphosate, I'm going to need more time, and I will need more slides in order to hit the point home to do that. But I just tell you right now, glyphosate is the preferred weed killer underneath the trees. And so obviously that's also taken out the microbes. It's chelating the micronutrients. The trees are not getting the health that they need. The Brix levels continue to go down, and the industry continues in free fall.
I know this guy's got a question, but I got to make sure that when I'm sitting here listening and shaking my head at this and saying, can't anybody see this? I have to make sure that I don't just point fingers and look at my own operation, and I've got to say, what stupid thing do I keep doing? And maybe throwing chem at or populations at.
Yeah.
Saying, what do I need to change?
Yeah.
Know the wisdom on it.
That's a good point. That's an excellent point. And 2 days ago, I was at another conference here in Winnipeg, and I talked about Glenn Rabenberg, what he did with corn, and how he was able to get practically the same number of bushels of corn at 21 to 22,000 corn per acre. And he almost beat the guy who was at 32K per acre. And so I went ahead and did the math and found out that the profit margin for Glenn was huge compared to the conventional farmer. Because the conventional farmer we thought was getting about 380. Glenn told me he was making 1170 because of course it was all organic, and the profit margins were huge. I had calculated 1,500 per acre. I don't know if you actually made 1,500 per acre, but the other guy was at 300 per acre profit. And so yes, all of this can be applied to different plants. So if you're putting out 36,000 corn, I'm thinking, yeah, you're going to have some problems associated with that. You're going to have to throw out more insecticides to take care of the insects. You're going to have to put out more fungicides in order to take care of the fungus problems. And so Glenn, in his wisdom, I will not say that again, But Glenn, in his wisdom, has found a way around this in order to give a chance for the plant to, ready for this, to breathe and to get its own nutrients and to produce what it's supposed to be doing, which is 158 bushels, by the way. The other guys were at 160. Yes, question?
Dr. Dykstra kind of tied into what this gentleman just said about transfer. This is a transferable concept, right?
Yes.
Citrus,
Yeah.
all crops.
Yeah.
Has anyone looked at the history of soil health during this whole time? Are there any researchers working on that?
Okay. That's an excellent question. Many people have asked me, is there anyone doing a similar thing either to this citrus industry and kind of follow along on their own particular way? And my answer is no. I don't know of anybody. This doesn't mean that they're not. But you also must understand is that any individual who's looking into this and started to see the things that I see will probably not have their job for long. Okay? So anyone who is at less than 6 years and doesn't have tenure yet is in a dangerous situation to try this. So a tenured professor would have a better chance, and even then, look at Don Huber, you can still get slammed even after you have tenure when you start speaking out against this. So no, I don't know of anybody else. I don't know of anybody else who really wants to look into this a little bit further. But sure, an agronomist could probably do the same thing. There may be plenty of data that's out there in order to pull from, just as I had a lot of data to pull from as well for this presentation. Yes?
Tar spot in corn, we get Brix levels high enough, we can control that?
Yep. Tar spot in corn can be controlled by higher Brix levels. The tar is being caused by manganese oxide. So it's a large collection of manganese, and it can be corrected by calcium.
Is the higher corn populations affecting that, or?
Yeah. I'm assuming you're not doing 21 to 22 K per acre, yeah. Most of them are running between 32 to 36. Is that where you are, 32 to 36? Okay. The corn, when it's that close to one another, does not have enough sun. Corn leaves, I don't need to tell you this, are huge. And these huge corn leaves are going to need a little bit of space in order to get it. So when they're that close, the only thing that's getting sun are the leaves on the top, which means you're going to have a low Brix plant because it's not getting all the sugar that it needs. And once it suffers, tar spot's going to be the result, if not other fungus infections. We have lots of problems that can occur when you have a weakened plant. So yes, that applies to corn. It applies to any crop that's out there right now. Again, I just did citrus because I'm a Florida boy, but absolutely this applies, as we're kind of finding out right now. Any other, are we at the point where the questions are done? Lauren, do you have any questions? How are we doing? No? Last chance, last chance. We've got 2 available mics. Here you go. Because if you don't do it now, I'm not answering any more questions in the bathroom or the hallways. Oh, yes. All right, go ahead.
What are your top 4 recommendations to reverse that?
Top 4 recommendations. All right. Have any of you, this is not a rhetorical question, how many of you have heard of a steel chainsaw? All right, I got one. I'd probably go through, if I was going to do this, I would probably chainsaw every other tree and then start working on half of the trees now in order to get them nutritionally up. That would be the first thing that I would do. So that needs to stop. The second thing that I would be doing is I would stop using glyphosate because I need the trees to health up, and I would be putting down sugar. Organic source would be better because obviously some of the molasses have a high amount of glyphosate in them, which kind of defeats the purpose of using that. So if you could get a good organic source of molasses, that would be preferable. So I'd definitely be looking to do something like that. And we've got many other ways. I know organic gem is here. Organic gem is a fish emulsion that the microbes love. And so since the microbes are growing our plants, it's important in order to put down the products that we need in order to get them healthy again. In a nutshell, I would stop using all chemicals and I would start using nutritionals. There are many, many nutritionals that are out there. So I just mentioned organic gem right now simply because you're sitting here right now, but you know, the kelps and other things like that are also good stuff. Any type of nutritional is either going to help you or it's going to do absolutely nothing, but you will not go backwards with many of the nutritionals that are out there right there. So that's a good question. That's a good question that you ask. All right, how are we doing? We got another question. We got these brave souls who, after I told them that they can't talk to me in the bathroom, are suddenly coming forward.
Put the pressure on.
Yeah.
Is this something that you could use, say, at a campground? And if you were to, do you kind of have a estimated time frame for how long it would take to kind of make things healthy and get rid of, you know, the annoying insects on things like that or yard
Oh.
lights?
Yeah, that's funny that you'd say that. A time frame in order to turn things around assumes that I'm getting cooperation. Do I believe for a second that I'm going to get cooperation on this? Not for a second. I would have to have a team of Tom Dykstras, people that I trust, in order to start making the changes. Because if I start asking people that I do not trust in order to turn things around, I think this is going to be a long haul to nowhere. So how long will it take to turn it around? I wish I could answer that, but I will give you this answer. I will give you this answer. I could correct this problem considerably faster than it took us to destroy it. How about that? That means I can do it in less than 100 years. And I'm pretty sure of that.
Just kind of more what I was asking is if you did have a campground cooperate kind of thing, or say even like my own farmyard, if I was to start doing this instead of, say, spreading an insecticide around, how long do you think it would take for it to have a noticeable effect?
Oh, okay. Before a noticeable effect, because you gave me a low bar, 1 year, first season. You'll notice it immediately. Usually when you put on nutritionals, you can tell within 24 hours. So you take a Brix reading. You take a Brix reading first, and then you put on the nutritional, whichever one you want to do. And then you go back and you test the leaves 24 hours later, and you see if it had an effect. If the Brix went up, even if it's 0.5, then that means the tree liked it, or the plant liked it. And so you can usually get an answer very, very quickly, within 24 hours, no more than 72. So you can notice this stuff with the Brix refractometer when you're measuring this. You can notice it and measure it quickly. As far as turning around a tree, it also depends upon how far you are with the tree. If you're dealing with a crop plant, obviously you get to start from day one because you're planting corn seed, and therefore you're starting at day one, and therefore you don't have to help correct a problem. Whereas a citrus tree that's 40 years old, which should be full grown, it might take me a little bit, it might take me more than a few weeks or even a season in order to turn it around. So it's a difficult question to answer. I'm just letting you know that it can be turned around. I don't have faith that it will be turned around, but one that I can do in less than 100 years. And if you want to figure, if I had full cooperation, 10 years max, probably less. Might even, if I got full cooperation, I think I might be able to do this in 5, I think. Yep. Yeah, if I got the right products, turn things around, dealing with a low density situation, I could make significant progress in 5 years. So since I'm being recorded right now and you asked the question and I understand you're a plant from the chemical industry, I'll go ahead. I'm just playing with you. I'm just playing with you right now. I'm not serious. Just go ahead and delete that right now, okay? All right, if there aren't any more questions, whoa!
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, she can't go into the bathroom, which why? She could last year, but now she can't go in there.
So what's the place for organic orange production? Are they gonna be more productive, and is that the future?
Organic citrus production. I know Uncle Matt's organic. I know the guys really well. Great guys. They are having an easier time with this. They're not doing great. A lot of their trees are at 9 Brix. Their fruit drop is reduced. Fruit drop is getting so bad it's about 40%. So about 40% fruit drop on some of these trees. That's how unhealthy they are. I was talking with Ben McLean one time. It was a number of years ago, and he was complaining about fruit drop. And he said, "Oh, this fruit drop is killing us. We're losing a lot of money right now." I said, "What's the percentage? How much are you losing?" He goes, "We're right around 5%. I said, "Ben, 5%? The industry is losing 40% right now, and you're complaining about this. Yeah, I know, but it still hurts. I was like, I get it, because it affects your bottom line. But Uncle Matt's Organic in Florida is certainly doing better. I don't know how many other organic citrus guys are out there, but his trees are healthier. They can easily hit 9 Brix, but they weren't as high as I thought they should be. And that's when I was talking with Ben, and I said, well, how many trees are you putting per acre? And then when he told me, I told him, I just slapped him across the face on the phone. And I was like, okay, you need to stop this. This is part of the problem. And so I don't think anything happened of it, though, but we need to do a total package if you're going to change it. And so right now, Uncle Matt's Organic is running a little higher than I'm comfortable with. I don't know if they've changed in the past few years. I hope that they are. But I do know that they're doing better than the other citrus guys, especially the one that just shut down a couple of weeks ago. And but they're just not as big. On the other hand, maybe they'll start buying up some citrus acres and expand. I don't know. But the organic guy down there, the guy I know, because I know just one right now, I haven't worked with the others, are certainly doing better right now, as you would expect something to happen. Lauren, I've got 2 available mics. If you move in right now for the kill, I can make the quick escape.